Hey y'all, you know who it is, Candidly Kelly, and I haven't talked to you guys in so long. I haven't posted a video in so long. I know I talk about consistency a lot and how I need to be consistent, and I'm still yet not consistent, but I'm a work in progress, and God accepts me as I am. I really want to talk about Thorns. I was reading a devotional on YouVersion. If you don't have the Bible app, you should totally get it, because there's another app called YouVersion inside of it pretty much, and you can pick devotionals that speak to your everyday life. So the one that I'm on right now is super awesome and very convicting. So today I want to talk about thorns, Paul's vision with his thorns, and how it can relate to your life. Any of my videos before, you notice that I'm a huge perspective type of person. I like to think about things in a way of perspective, and that's what I like about Paul, is his perspective. Thinking about going back to when he was in jail, and instead of being broken free from his chains, that he still stayed there and he worshiped, right? That speaks about Paul for me, and I feel like, in a sense, as far as tending to learn to choose perspective, those are things that Paul and I have in common. But just to go about his visions, he went about in a way of calling things like hardships or anything like that, like his hardships and his trials, he called them thorns. So thorns equal trials, right? So if you go back to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, it talks about his vision and how he saw things as thorns, right? So those thorns caused him to rely on God. So he was confident, but he didn't brag, because there was no gain from it. So even though he knew that he had these visions from God, he never really bragged about it, but instead he was given thorns. And so he asked God to remove those thorns from him. 3 times he asked God to remove those thorns. But let me tell you what God said instead. God said in 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, "My grace is sufficient for you, and my power works best in weakness." And so when I read that, it's like, oh, thank you, Lord, right? So it's like he's asking for things to get taken away, but God chooses to use those things for his glory, right? So think about that in your everyday life. You're going through these things and you want them to go away, and you want these trials to go away, but God brought you these things for a reason. Always remember, my grace is sufficient for you. My power works best in weakness. Like, that alone is powerful. And so immediately when Paul heard that, he had to remind himself that he needed to be joyful. So instead of choosing pain, he chose joy. So I always talk about choosing joy over pain. If you haven't watched any of my videos, most of my videos talk about perspective and choosing joy. And that's why I smile so much, because I choose joy. He learned to boast gladly about his weakness. He learned to be joyful because he knew that when he was weak, God made him strong. And that alone was a revelation to him. That alone said something to Paul. So let's choose to be more like Paul. Let's be confident that that speaks to you. And what I want you to do, my challenge to you, is read 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Read the whole chapter and see what I'm talking about. The provision and the promise that God gives him, even through those thorns or those trials. So what I want you to do is think about it, pray about it, and be about it. And remember, God will always take care of it.